going to talk about entitled clients. I know many of you out there are frustrated day in and day out because of this group of clientele that you guys call the entitled clients. That's what I called them as well. You know who they are. They're the ones who call, and no matter when it is, whether or not they have an appointment, they get to come on in. They're also the ones who, when they have an appointment, often don't show up on time, and they also not uncommonly show up with more than one pet that was scheduled. You know who I'm talking about here? These types of clients really create a lot of frustration inside of the veterinary healthcare team. And it's very frustrating to be moving along in your appointments, and then all of a sudden you see that appointments get stacked on top that weren't there before, and you see different people getting shuffled around, and then the waiting room is filling up because people are sitting and waiting, all because of the entitled client. Now, some of us actually call these clients star clients. Why do we call them that? We call them that because they tend to generate a decent amount of revenue for our practices. But what we don't recognize is the impact that they have on the entire practice. We also don't recognize how it's actually us that created that entitled client mentality in the first place. So what I want to talk about here for just a few minutes is the creation of the entitled client, how the come on in now culture is actually destroying your practice, and how your people-pleasing nature isn't helping anybody, especially not you. So the entitled client, how did we create those? Just by that practice of when they call, we always fit them in. Or if they have an appointment and they show up late, we always see them. Why do we do that? Have you ever considered it? I know it's very frustrating when your day seems to be going somewhat smoothly and then all of a sudden one of those clients call, and no matter what, they get to be seen. They're not actually even true emergencies. It's just the way it's always been with that client. And in some cases, that's just the way that is in the whole hospital. This is that come on in mentality that some of us have created in our practices. And sometimes even it's something that's dictated maybe by a corporate level practice. That might be something that they're doing. But what I want you to recognize is that as we have trained our clients that when they call, we will always fit them in. If they show up late, we will always see them. If they show up with more than one pet, that we'll see them all. As we have continued to allow that behavior over and over and over again, we don't have anybody to blame but ourselves. We blame the client. We get frustrated when they call and they ask to come in, or they show up with more than one pet, or they're late. Why? I got to ask you, why are you frustrated with the client when it's you who has taught that client that that type of behavior is acceptable? When it's you that has taught that client that there is no consequence for not scheduling an appointment ahead of time, for showing up late, or showing up with multiple pets? I know it's a little bit of tough love here, my friends, but ultimately we do teach our clients how to treat us. And it's impossible for this type of behavior to coexist with excellent customer service. Some of us want to use that umbrella as the excuse for why we do it. Oh, it's great customer service to go ahead and get them in. It's great customer service for us to go ahead and see that extra pet that she brought that she didn't tell us she was bringing. And I want to call total BS on that. That's terrible customer service. It's good customer service for that client who you've taught can get whatever they want whenever they want it. The rest of your schedule and clients be damned. It's terrible customer service for the rest of your clientele and your entire veterinary healthcare team. It really creates a culture of burnout and a culture of no control. That come on in culture that we have created in our hospitals, whether it's for specific clients or if it's just our culture overall, that's contributing to burnout. That's contributing to you believing that you are a slave to your job. So then the question becomes, why are we doing it? Why do we do that? For some of us, we've inherited practices where that come on in mentality has just always existed. We've inherited practices, or we've joined practices as associates where some of those star clients, the ones that get in no matter what, who can show up late and it's no big deal, where that kind of client has been catered to over that with that type of behavior over years and years of time. And when we've inherited those kinds of clients and those kinds of practices, then it can be a little unnerving to stand up against it. Now, if you're the practice owner and that's not the way that you want to do things, then by all means, you have every single opportunity to change that. If you're an associate and you see this happening, you also have power to change it too. But what this all boils down to, my friends, is the willingness to have a difficult conversation. When I say difficult conversation, I'm talking about one of those conversations that kind of you have a pit in your stomach before you ever go in and have it. And I'm not talking about having that conversation with the client. It first starts with having that conversation with the management. If you're an associate, definitely it's the management you're talking to. If you are the business owner, then you get to decide. You get to decide what you want to do, for sure. So if you're the business owner, then that difficult conversation is going to kind of start out with the actual clients themselves. And they actually don't even have to be difficult conversations. We build this up to being so much more than it is. We literally can decide to change our hospital policy and then stick with it. When we're associates, then what our opportunity is to go to our management and say, hey, look, this is what we've created. This is what's happening. This is how the other clients are not being served, because we are always kind of on demand for whoever calls next. That's terrible business practice. Now, that all being said and done, obviously that is my opinion, that is terrible business practice. But having been clients in those kinds of situations, you guys have experienced it yourselves. You've experienced it in doctor's offices. You've experienced it in all kinds of places. There's nothing worse than having an appointment time and sitting there an hour and a half later for no obvious reason, no signs of emergency, nothing else. It's just that the time isn't managed wisely. The message that we send to our clients in those moments is that we don't respect their time, that we don't respect them as clientele. So those clients who actually have so much potential to becoming solid, regular clients, we often end up turning them away just by the way that we treat them when we're there, because we're stepping head over heels to handle the star client, the entitled client, the other people who we've taught over time can show up whenever they want, as late as they want, with as many pets as they want, and we'll see them anyway. If this is not the kind of culture that you want, then definitely it's time to have that conversation. And for those of you associates out there who really don't believe that you have any power at all over this, that this truly is like the mandate that's come down, then I have this for you. Number one, still have the conversation. If you can have the conversation with your leadership about how this is actually negatively impacting your entire client base, your hospital morale, your ability to serve clients and patients well, then there may be an opportunity to shift that. But if there isn't, then what you need to recognize is you have all the information that you need to make an informed decision. If this is not the way that you want to practice medicine, and it is the way that it's always going to stay at that hospital, then you no longer get to wear the victim hat of being an associate there. Nobody is forcing you to stay. We always have choices. And one of the things that we do in veterinary medicine is we put on our people-pleasing face, we go through, we try to keep everybody happy, which internally, keep in mind, every time that you're doing something to keep somebody else happy, you're lying to yourself. So just recognize how you're actually destroying your own self-esteem every single time you do that. And then as you fall into this belief that this is just the way it is, that it's never going to change, what you're forgetting is that every single moment you have choice. There are other jobs out there. Now, you can also elect to just get the information, realize that the come on in mentality is the way that it is at the hospital where you practice, and you can decide to stay anyway. Ultimately, you get to have that choice. It is your choice whether or not you stay or go if the come on in mentality is the way that it is at that practice. But when you're making that decision, number one, make sure that you actually have the information. So many of us just believe that's the way that it's always going to be because that's the way it always has been. And we've never actually had the conversation with management to see if that was actually the intent. What many of us don't realize is that when you're a manager and when you're a practice owner, sometimes things are moving so quickly that you don't take time to step back and look at the whole picture. And often it's actually very helpful for somebody who's seeing it from another perspective to step up and have a conversation. So don't be afraid to have a conversation just because you assume that you know what the answer is. I promise you that you don't. And the information that you get from that conversation is super valuable in you being able to make an educated decision on what's best for you. In the absence of that information from that conversation, you are just assuming that you know how things are going to stay, and then you're making decisions based on assumptions. Who wants to live their life based on assumptions? That rolls you right back around into that victim mentality that, oh, poor me, this job is terrible. My bosses, we just see whatever, like they have no control over the clients. The clients are terribly entitled. Everybody's cranky. It's a toxic work environment. Why would you just accept that without taking a look at it and truly understanding it? Why would you do that?